MidPoint continues. We welcome back Miami, Florida attorney Andell Brown and Los Angeles-based political commentator and activist Jasmyne Cannick. Also now from the perspective of law enforcement, welcome a former member of the Atlanta Police Department, now attorney and founder of the law firm, the Harrold firm, Marc Harrold. Marc, thanks so much for being here with us.
Sure, thanks for having me on.
Marc, let's go first of all because we left off talking about the incident in Indiana where the gentleman in the passenger seat did not give his ID to the officer as asked. The officer then smashed in the window, pulled him out, and arrested him here. Did the cops have too much attitude? What happened here? And are the cops just being overzealous? How could this have been avoided?
Well, I mean, it could have been avoided if he handed out the ID. The difference here is, I think I heard some talk about whether he has to produce the ID. As the passenger, as I understand the Indiana law, and I'm not an expert in Indiana law, as a passenger, I don't know that he does have to specifically give his ID. Now, if this had been the driver does have to proffer identification in the form of the driver's license, because it's the driver that my perception is that they had probable cause to pull the car over, albeit for a very minor crime. I think no seatbelt. Regardless of that, I think the overzealousness came with smashing the window with the children in the back seat, pulling him out that way. I think I would have handled this differently, but I can say from experience that it is when you're engaging anyone, regardless of how the initial counter, if their hands keep going down and you can't 100% see where their hands are, at that point it does turn into a situation where cops are going to start to worry. So I think there was an overreaction here, but I understand the officer and the department's comments with the fact that regardless of how it started, that can be scrutinized later. If you're encountering anybody that won't show you their hands or keep them in plain sight, it is troubling for a law enforcement officer.
Marc, is there an arrogance sometimes from people because they believe that they can either not give IDs, they don't have to follow the instructions from the officers? It would seem almost as if we're getting to a point in America where many people are saying, makes no difference their color or their sex. I don't have to do what you tell me to do, and I have my rights to stay here and do nothing.
Well, I don't ever want to get to a point where you're arrogant by asserting your rights. I mean, the question is we can look at each situation and is whether somebody has the right or whether they have to comply and all that, depending on how the statutes are written and whether they're constitutional. Showing ID to a law enforcement officer was challenged up to the Supreme Court in a Nevada case a few years ago. So, no, I don't think people are arrogant to assert their rights. That's just what they are. Can there become situations where the attitude gets involved in the encounter and everybody gets a little bit hot and it gets heated to a point where it doesn't need to? Of course. But I don't think people are arrogant to assert their rights. If you truly don't have a right to do something, it exceeds the Fourth Amendment, 14th Amendment in this case because it's state action, then I don't think people are being arrogant to protect their rights.
Jasmyne Cannick, let me go to you first on this. How then do we avoid these things happening? Certainly we're all talking about this. We're seeing the video. It does seem as if the officers were much too overzealous in this. So how then do we get the citizenry and law enforcement to get to a point of where this doesn't happen anymore? And if you could, please keep your answer short.
We got to go back to the table and sit down and talk about community policing, community relations, and just common sense in dealing with other folks. I heard your prior guest say something about his hands were down there and the police might have gotten nervous. Look, he said he had his kids in the back several times. That is not someone that is about to pull out a gun and do something right.
Well, fair to say, though, the police don't know that, correct?
It's fair to say that they can use common sense and looking and judging what a situation is or could possibly be, and they didn't use good judgment in this situation, and hopefully they'll pay for it.
Andell, your response to this now. What do we do then to bring these two sides together here and stop these things from happening?
I think one of the things was mentioned by the prior guest, and that's community policing, but I think also we need transparency and accountability. If there's transparency and accountability, it rebuilds the relationship between the community and the police department so that the community knows that the officers are working in their best interest, and also so that officers are called to give account for the actions that they take and they don't take. A lot of the narratives that are framed in cases where someone is arrested or there's a citation given, it's really only from one side. We don't really have an objective third party. And I think that's where body cameras and other things like that come in. It will help provide accountability and transparency to key issues in this matter.
Marc Harrold, 30 seconds in. Is that really the answer here then, transparency, but having that third person, that third entity, if you will, there, and the body cameras?
Yeah, transparency is key. You know, in America, you govern with the consent and there's no trust. That's what really fuels these things. As far as the comment about the fact that just for children were present, I understand taking that into consideration as to the way the passenger would react, but I can say from doing probably hundreds of domestic calls that people act all sorts of ways with their children present, so it can be dangerous to make those assumptions. I understand what she was saying, though, about the fact that people usually do act differently when children are present.
It always is difficult because, once again, the police come in a situation and they have no idea what's going on, and they're basically having to take it from the very first second. So they do need to have a little patience and understanding, as do the people as well, the citizens. Marc Harrold, Jasmyne and Andell Brown, I want to thank all three of you for being here today. I trust we're going to speak again at this. I look forward to it. Thank you for your opinions.
Thank you.
All right, later on this hour, the international sports organization known more for event blackmail than anything else is losing its luster. And after the break, why Twitter is taking the government to court. And they'll probably do it in less than 140 characters, at least you would hope. That's coming up right here on MidPoint.